Hello, my name is Ash Oganessian, and today I'll be doing a short presentation on osteobiologics. So, what are osteobiologics? Osteobiologics, they are basically engineered materials that people create or harvest, and they're used in surgeries that have to do with some deficiency in bone stock, or a bone loss, or after a trauma, or just if a fracture is having a difficult time in healing. You can use osteobiologics for those types of situations. Here I have the official definition, which is it's a osteobiologics refer to a class of engineered materials that have been created and which promote healing of fractures and bone defects. So they're essentially bone grafts. That's what they are. Indications for osteobiologics include assisting in healing of fractures, like I said, arthrodesis procedures, so bone fusions, and other bone defects. Maybe some people were born with bones that need bone lengthening, bone issues. They're all eligible to use these osteobiologics or bone grafts. So the properties of osteobiologics, there are three main properties. They are osteoconductiveness, osteoinductiveness, and osteogenicity. So osteoconductive, the property of osteoconductiveness or being osteoconductive, it creates structural framework for the bone to grow on. So you're giving the bone something to grab onto, something to hold onto, so so bone cells can transfer across and actually become bone eventually and heal into a good bone. Osteoinductiveness, it has to do with the factors that stimulate bone growth and the induction of the stem cells. So this property has actually it forces the stem cells to to activate and produce more and stimulate more bone growth through the actual cellular cycle. And then osteogenicity, it's a material that provides cells. It makes cells produce the bone itself. So osteoblasts and things like that. It activates that whole process. So we want the ideal bone graft to basically have four things, which is biocompatibility, bioresorbability, osteoconductiveness, and osteoinductiveness. If they have these four properties, then we have a good bone graft to use. And since we move on to the actual types of the bone grafts, so we have autografts, allografts, we have demineralized bone matrix, we have synthetics, and we have bone growth factors. So in this presentation, we'll be focusing more on the autograft, allograft, and the bone growth factors. Those are the more common osteobiologics used. So what are autografts? Autograft properties include so let's go over the properties of each of these. So autograft properties, they have osteoconductiveness, they're good osteoinductive, and they're good in osteogenicity. So they're good in all three of the properties that bone grafts are supposed to have. The allografts, they give us osteoconductiveness and osteoinductiveness, but they do lack the osteogenicity because we're taking the allograft from somewhere else. We're not harvesting it from our own bodies, which means that we're going to be missing some of that cellular factor there. Demineralized bone matrix, it includes osteoconductiveness and osteoinductiveness once again. The synthetics, they have osteoconductiveness and osteogenicity, but they do lack the osteoinductiveness. And then finally, the bone growth factors, they only give us the osteogenicity because obviously they're just the factors that are needed for healing. So a little in more detail for the autografts, basically they are the gold standard for any foot procedure using an autograft is to harvest the autograft from the autogenous iliac crest bone, which is your own iliac crest bone. So the surgeon will go in, they'll actually make an incision and cut out a little piece of your own iliac crest and transfer that bone to the foot wherever they're going to put it into. Autograft can vary in the quality based on the age of the patient, the age of because bone can decrease in quality over age. The health of the patient also matters. So what kind of bone quality they have. A major thing with an autograft is that you have to be mindful of the secondary site morbidity, which is very common. That incision on the second site that we're using to graft that iliac bone, it can cause a hematoma. It can have an infection, fracture, or a hypertrophic scar. Now the allograft. The allografts are easily available. They're different. They have different sizes and shapes, and they have no need for a donor site. Incorporation quality it's affected by preservation and freezing, because you do need to the allografts do need to be preserved. They're basically taken from a cadaver, and they need to be saved for when they need to be used, and therefore they could, if they're stored for a very long time, they could kind of go down in quality. But we have a little bit of more variability with this, because if you're doing an autograft, if you mess up or you take a size that's too small or too big from your own iliac crest, let's say, you can't just keep going back to that iliac crest and digging a bone. With the allograft, it kind of gives you that freedom. If you mess up a little bit, you could try a different size or a different shape. And the substitutes that are also used, you can have bone graft substitutes that are usually synthetically made, and these are not allografts. They're actually the bone substitutes that simulate bone, and those can also be used. As for bone growth factors and the aspirates used to basically inject or put into that fracture line or the trauma site to just increase the cellular turnover. There are different things that can be injected or used here as far as factors go. So there's the platelet-derived growth factor (BB). There's the vascular endothelial growth factors that have shown some promise. There's fibroblast growth factors and osteoblast progenitor cells. The platelet-derived growth factor (BB), it's active in early bone healing. And in formation of new blood vessels. So that can, if you're putting that and transferring that into your fracture site, it could definitely help with that process. Help the body do that process. The vascular endothelial growth factor, we call it VEGF. It promotes bone turnover and angiogenesis. Also, the fibroblast growth factor, they're active in fracture healing. They've been shown in a lot of tests to promote healing, and fibroblasts are found a lot in bone and the healing process generally. Osteoblast progenitor cells, or these are the type of stem cells that we know, and they're mostly harvested again from the iliac crest. These can be used because again, if the trauma is too big, a lot of cellular damage, these could be put in there, and they could kind of differentiate into whatever the body needs to fill the gap and make the bone. And usually these things are introduced by a scaffold, like a hyaluronic acid gel or sodium gel or something like that. Now the comparisons between each, the autograft is usually the best when it comes to, is better than the allograft and bone substitute when it comes to ease of incorporation into the body, your body not rejecting it, and overall surgical results. Autografts are better. However, you do have to be mindful of that secondary incision site morbidity that can be infected, or it can cause you some problems if you don't take care of it. The autograft has less complications with non-union and malunion when compared to the allograft and bone substitute also. The bone substitute and allografts have comparable results to each other, so there isn't any statistical or significant difference between either. There are some price differences, but as far as which of these is the best, again, autograft is better. But we also have to be mindful that the allografts and substitutes, like I mentioned earlier, they're easier to come across. They're easier to just have in stock. you don't have to go through that secondary incision site on your patient to harvest it from, and there's just you have a little bit more freedom when it comes to that. So my conclusion with osteobiologics is that there are many types, and more are being developed every year. More and more studies are coming out. There is, however, a need to do more research when it comes to the osteobiologics in the feet, in the use of them in the feet. And like I said, it's always being updated, and new things are always being found out. All of these have their own unique qualities. They can be expensive depending on what kind you use, how you store them, and so forth. But at the end of the day, they have been shown to be very helpful in fracture healing and any other bone deformities that you may have. That was my presentation. Thank you very much.